Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, I have actually. Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna push pause on that because okay, that's cool. Yeah, I can see the chat. I'm actually sitting in a different place. I don't have my. Oh, it's actually asking me to log into Twitch, which is not a bad thing because I won't be part of the chat. You can just maybe relay the. I can read the chat, but I can't type into it, which is fine. Or should I? Yeah. Do you mean do you want me to like include it on Twitch or like? Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna make your video shorter, and then I can see. Okay. So should I start quickly? Are you recording? Okay. Should. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'm ready.
Morning, Jeremy.
Morning, Eddie.
Hopefully you're not nervous. Your first live stream.
Yeah, no, I'll be fine. I've done it. Well, it's like when I did a couple of conference talks, you're like super nervous in the beginning, and then once you start talking, the butterflies go
Yeah,
away.
that's true. I forgot you did quite a few conference talks, so this will be easy for you. You haven't got 500 people sitting in front of you.
Well, it was more than 500. It's the whole world, right? It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
internet. I'm just joking. So yeah, let me give a bit of a brief. So beginning of 2016, I decided I had some savings. I wanted to kind of do a startup full time and try and attack like an idea of my own. But there was, quite a few motivation behind it. Like when I was in the UK, I worked at Comic Relief, and that was awesome. Like, we raised so much money for charity. Um, and I realized at that point that you can do like social good with code or with software. So the systems we built at Comic Relief, we raised like millions of pounds for charity. So when I like was going to do a startup, I thought, well, let me try and do something that's going to make things better. So I copied the idea from the UK, which was mysupermarket.co.uk, and sounds a bit random, but comparing grocery prices online is something that didn't really exist in South Africa. Um, and the reason I did it was I lived in the UK for 8 years, South African and British now. But when I came home, I noticed the price of everything had just skyrocketed. Yeah, it was like the price of things were out of control. And so I built tech to actually scrape the supermarket websites to do price comparison on groceries. I successfully launched the product, got users, but in the end, I took the product down. And the reason I took the product down was because my URLs for the website were basically product barcode. And what that meant was that the whole world, people from overseas, people locally in South Africa, started scraping me because I had aggregated the price of beans across 6 price points in like one place. So I started basically getting, attacked by the rest of South Africa, but also yeah, I mean that's quite a bit of background in a short space of time, but yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I'm 2 years and 5 months in of doing a startup on my own, and yeah, it's been really fun.
So if I
Um,
can jump in there with a question, so
yeah,
so if I can give people a bit more background as well. So we worked together many years
yeah,
ago at various government agencies in the UK, and doing a lot of PHP kind of stack and stuff like that. and you did a lot of talks in conferences, and I always asked the difficult questions and and try to make your life a bit harder. But I might, in the video actually on YouTube, I might include some of those questions from those videos. I think that'd be quite funny. 'Cause I remember on one of them, you go, "Oh no." It's the last PHP conference we went to, I think about 5 years ago. I was the first person to ask you a question, and the first thing you said was, "Oh no." I was like, "Thanks, man."
Yeah, but you remember, Eddie? It was quite funny. I'll tell quite a few people the story. You basically I had an interview set up. I didn't know it was with you. Do you remember that?
Oh yes,
So I had
I
a job.
forgot.
Then but you were like, oh, this guy's talking at the conference, so let me go hear his talk. And then you came up afterwards and asked me like all these questions, and I was like, obviously trying to answer them. And then I saw you, or then I came to the interview, and I was like, but holy crap, you were the guy at the conference. So it was quite sneaky.
It's a small world. It's a small world. But yeah, I was going to the conference anyway, and I saw you were speaking, so I made sure I came to your talk. But it was the conference that I think a year or two later that I asked the question, and you kind of obviously knew who I was. We'd worked together, yeah, you were like, "Oh shit," and then I said, "Oh no," you didn't say "Oh shit," you said "Oh no." But I'll try and see if I can find that clip. And when I chop this up for YouTube, I'll try and like slot it in there, like 10 seconds or whatever it was, 20 seconds to include it in the video. But yeah, so we worked together, and then you saved up loads of money. You went back to South Africa. You live like a king now. No, I'm joking, but no, it gave you the ability to not work for somebody else and to work for your own startup.
Yeah, I was really fortunate. I mean, on that point, obviously, with the exchange rate, I had some money saved, which I don't anymore now. But yeah, it allowed me to kind of attack a problem space, and basically get up 9 or 8 to 5, sometimes 8 to 8, whatever it may be, and just attack a problem without like, having to. Yeah, I could just do whatever I wanted. I could use whatever tech stack I wanted, which was amazing. So obviously, I used that opportunity to shift away from PHP. PHP is still a decent language, although Eddie might have,
I'm not saying anything. I think all languages are decent in their own right.
But I've learned Golang, and I've become proficient in Golang, and it was kind of I took a step back, going from a paid programming job every day, but I got to learn Golang, which has been amazing because I learned the concurrent models, using channels, and making concurrent programs, which is a new skill that I've picked up, and that was really fun.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, you probably have a question for me, so I'll let you.
I do have a few. I have two actually. Two main ones. One's on tech, but I'll get back to that in a second. I was going to ask about. So you were saying that you were getting scraped by other people because you kind of aggregated this data and it was useful to other people. Could you not have seen that as another revenue model, or were people saying that it was bad what you'd done?
Yeah, no. So what's crazy? So I should probably give a bit of history. So I built the product, and then the supermarkets in South Africa were like, okay, well, so let me take even a further step back. So basically, if you're going to do a startup, you should have a business model. Like that's the number one thing you should have. You should know exactly from the start how you're going to make money. So a lot of the time, people try and build an internet-facing consumer product, something like Facebook, for example, and Facebook doesn't charge you, so they sell your data to advertisers, or they can see how you use the product, and then they can target you with adverts. So for me, I didn't have a business model up front, and I didn't think it was going to be that much of an issue because I thought what I was building was really useful, which it proved to be. But yeah, I forgot your question, and I'm getting a bit sort of sidetracked here. But yeah, so when people started scraping me, when people started scraping me, that made me realize what the business model was, is that the data is worth a lot of money. So actually the supermarkets approached me and said, wow, like you've got all this data, can we have a look at your data set? I got really far in negotiations with one supermarket. It fell through in the end because this is kind of weird to say on camera, but South African supermarkets, or supermarkets in general, are just usually, they're very behind the curve when it comes to technology, like especially in South Africa. And I've got to be careful what I say here, but they're very used to dictating what happens, so for example, you've got to pay for, like if you've got a product and you bring it to the supermarket and you want to put it on the shelves, you've got to pay a lot of money for that. And if you want to like up in our view, you've got to pay a lot of money for that. And the supermarkets really dictate to the manufacturers. And so when I was going in there with my technology, they really wanted to dictate everything. Now, I could have succumbed to that and said, okay, I'll do whatever you want, for money. But, they wanted to access my data exclusively. And they're willing to pay a decent price for it. But the problem is, if I gave them that data exclusively, it tied me into one supermarket and I didn't have the business. And so when I said, look, I'm not going to do that, but I'll give you the data for a bit cheaper, but then they wanted the data for next to nothing. So it was a tricky one. But yeah, the way to make money off this product is actually consumers come online, they put their shopping list, and we're like, hey, this is where you can save money. This is where you should shop for this. This is where you should shop for that. And actually, we can sell that data. And that's actually worth quite a bit of money, which I've discovered in the last couple of months. So I'm diverging a bit here, but what's really interesting and what I've learned from doing my startup is that if you build an internet-facing consumer product where the users don't pay for the product, then you need a big marketing budget and a lot of money to get enough users on the product so that you can gather data from those users to sell it. And so that's the route that I want to now take. So I'm in talks with a venture capital firm at the moment. We've got some money, but it's going to take quite a bit of money and probably another 18 months for us to get there. So the decision now becomes, do we raise that money and then, do they want to give me the money? Do I take it and then actually go do this? Because I think it can still work, but it's, it's neither here nor there at the moment. So the sort of conversation and dialogue is ongoing, but exciting nevertheless. And it's been, if I walked away from this today, the amount that I've learned about doing startups, like I can take all those lessons to the next one and hopefully make the next one, profitable from day one or start making money from day one. So yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I think, nowadays, especially having startups is, it's about kind of having the more you've done, the better that you get. Just like with anything, I mean, this is probably my 20th stream. You just see my first one. I couldn't talk. I was nervous, and I'm still nervous. Don't get me wrong, but I think less so. And it's just practice. Okay, with startups, you can't do 20 or 30 or 40, but they're not so short like a stream that's an hour or two. So what you've learned over the last couple of years on that, must have been phenomenal, and being on it full time has allowed you to learn it faster. So everyone knows I'm wearing my cap, I've got my startup dashboard hub, but me doing only a couple of hours a day, what you learned in 2 years is probably going to take me 10 years. So I think that's really good that you were able to focus on it and just get your head down and just do it. Although I did see in Facebook, you go to a lot of parties and barbecues in South Africa. Your weather's too good there. That's the problem. If you had rain like here, you'd stay in more.
So yeah, well, I mean, I try and enjoy the weekends, but I mean, I think, we're at such an interesting time now with technology. Like what I've realized more than ever in the last sort of 2 years, okay, and I've never kind of looked at it like this, and it's weird because I'm a web developer. That's where my skill set is. But once you put a product on the internet, anyone can access your product, right? And that, when you think about it like that, that's quite an amazing thing. That's how you get these amazing things that, sort of come about. Okay, my product is mainly aimed at the South African market, but that means that, anyone with an internet connection in South Africa can use that product. And that's quite amazing. If you compare that to like a brick and mortar business of 20 years ago, only the people within the local vicinity, could kind of come to your product. And what I realized when I put the product online, people started emailing me and, like, oh, thank you so much. I saved money this month. I didn't realize I could get this product for cheaper. And, what actually happened is I realized, and this is an important like startup lesson is, don't do it on your own. Now it depends what you want to do, but like when I was going to meetings at supermarkets and not being able to have someone else there to like bounce ideas off after the meeting, or like, didn't you find those guys a bit like, they were a bit like bullish or like bullies, or like just like the way they speak to you, like was like, wow, did he actually say that? Like if you walk out the meeting and then have someone to bounce those ideas off, that's really important. But yeah, I mean, I've learned so much. I could probably, I need to sum it all up, but I would say, one thing I've learned is is also make sure that if you can, have other people involved, because you might have an idea or do something, spend 2 months on it, and actually it's worth this or worth nothing. So if you can talk things through with somebody else, that's
I definitely
I think
agree
it's a
with
lot
that
of
as well. I definitely agree with that.
yeah.
Having a co-founder, or not even necessarily a co-founder, but someone who is interested. They might be helping out every now and then, and obviously it's a two-way street. If they're helping out every now and then, you might be paying them. If a co-founder, you're probably not going to be paying them, but because you're both in it together and you both want it to succeed. But either way, having that other person to kind of, like I said, bounce ideas off them. Just when you have your lows, they can bring it all up and keep the momentum going and have the highs. And when they have their lows, then you also kind of, bring them up and keep that momentum going. And we had Car on the chat talking about, hopefully I pronounced it right, Car, that you work for a company who did kind of a social media kind of app. And it was successful in terms of 30% adoption, but never got to critical mass. So that's actually quite interesting in that there were sales going on, there was adoption going on, things were working, but I guess didn't get enough to make it worthwhile to continue. And we see that a lot in the tech industry. There is I can't think what it was recently. There was some open source project that I think you and me, Jeremy, we both used. I can't think what it was, but it was like a kind of like a service in a way. And they've recently brought it down. I think it was checking your dependencies if they were secure or insecure. And I can't think what it's called, but only about 6 months ago, he sent out a kind of a message to everyone who was using the service and said, I'm taking this down now. I've been going for 5 years. It's been really successful. Got an 800,000 or 8 million users, but only about 10 of them are actually paying. And so it's great that people used it, but for the paid subscription, it wasn't so successful. So after kind of putting the effort in, the time and the money for the servers and all the rest, he took it down. So that was quite interesting. Alistair, I saw was posting some messages.
Yeah, I think he posted the name of the software you were talking about called VersionEye.
Yes, VisionEye. Yes, that's the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alistair. Good to see you on here as well. I hope you're well. I haven't seen you since London a few years ago. VersionEye.
Yeah, but that's a really interesting point. So I built this product, launched it, got enough users. We think we've done we basically, to be able to sell the data that we're going to gather, our survey size only needs to be like 10,000 people. So for example, if you got shopping baskets and you can compare 10,000 shopping baskets, manufacturers will want to buy the data. The thing is, we're quite confident we can get there. The problem that we now have is it's going to take us a certain amount of money. You're going to have to burn through money to be able to get to that point. And it's now about if a venture capital firm wants to put that money up. But going back to what you're saying, like, there's no, like that guy that with VisionEye or VersionEye, he's learned a hell of a lot. All the lessons and stuff that he learns, okay, he probably built a great product. Some people probably loved it. Unfortunately, not enough people paid for it. But the next product that he does, he probably won't make that same mistake, or at least I hope he wouldn't, So there is this sort of, you've got to just learn from these lessons, and then the next one, hopefully you do a bit better.
Yeah, there is. I think there's two things to benefit from it. It's the learning, absolutely, but also the publicity, right? If he says, "Oh, I built this," it was successful in terms of it was a good product. It wasn't successful in terms of financially, but also I think that adds to their credibility, their networking. I think there's just so much more to it as well in terms of just making money. I mean, you got me into Gary Vaynerchuk, and watching his stuff has been like a real eye opener in terms of putting content out there. Don't just do it for money, and the money will come later. And how important social media is, because if you've got the best idea in the world, then if nobody knows about it, then it's kind of useless. And also, but the interesting thing is also to look at, because I think a lot of founders or entrepreneurs don't have the technical skills. So they might have a technical idea or something they want to do. Then they need to go find, someone to either co-found with them so they don't have to pay them, or find the money to pay them. So I think we have an extra kind of a bit of a benefit there where we can build something. We are lacking the social marketing skills, because I know for my project, I've probably done one tweet and one Facebook post and one Instagram post. Actually, it is one across all of those. And because that's always the lowest priority for me. For me, it's about building the product. So having, I think, a co-founder that would complement the skills, I think would be massively, massively valuable. But also hiring a tech person is quite expensive, but also doing the marketing side is expensive. So last week I did, I've never done this before. I did a paid promotion on Twitter, and I was like, okay, right, 50 quid, just cap it at that and see how it goes. Literally in 4 hours, it was just gone. It was just 50 quid went nowhere. I thought it was going to last for like 2 weeks, but no.
Yeah. So I think we have a question there. How you would go about marketing with a real budget, which I think is quite good because you were kind of talking about that now. And like I actually got asked that question 2 days ago, which is quite interesting. I think what a lot of people aren't aware of, okay, the UK market, which is quite interesting what you've just said, right? So the UK market's very different to the South African market. But if I had a real budget, the cost of social media ads is still relatively low in South Africa. So because not a lot of people, like South Africa is quite behind. So I noticed when I came on holiday last year to the UK and I was on Facebook, like I had more adverts in my feed than I did like actual content from my friends or pages that I've liked or whatever. But yeah, in South Africa, if you've got a great product, it's actually, that £50 would probably have gone a lot further in South Africa, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know about Twitter, but the other business that my wife is now running, we do a lot of Facebook marketing. We run Facebook ads, and we place an ad. It costs us 25 Rand a day, which is about 2 quid, and we get lots of we get lots of clicks, and people actually coming on and buying the product. But if I had a real budget for marketing, to answer the question, it would definitely be social media. It would be using social media platforms. Both, you can use that budget to make great content, video content. Like if you can make a video for the thing, people engage with videos a lot more than just a picture. So people actually click play, and if it's engaging, they'll watch it. For my product, the main way to market well, I've got a ton of traffic via SEO. I did my SEO really well, and that was because I've got the technical knowledge. It was practically free to do. So I got loads of users signing up and coming into the product from that. But yeah, I also think, the traditional things like Google cost per click, obviously depending on the actual, term you want to buy, is also, a great way to market the product. I mean, yeah, marketing is not my forte. So,
well, the question actually was marketing without a real budget. So the kind of the opposite of what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awful. I read the question wrong. Okay, well, without a real budget, I mean.
But you said video content, which is, I think people can probably do, just put it on YouTube for free and share with their friends and family, and hopefully it will kind of spread out a bit more.
Yeah, and I think great content can go a long way. SEO is one huge way, obviously. I mean, it's not technically free, but if you got you can Google, for example, have a great, I don't know if you've read the Google book on SEO, but it's like a 30-page PDF. If you just Google Google SEO tips, Google book or whatever PDF, I mean, just all those, getting like the basics right. I mean, that's all free. Okay, there is some technical work up front you need to do. But all the social media platforms are free, and if you're putting out good, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, content is the currency of the internet. So if you put out great content, yes, there's a time investment to create that content, but you can put it onto the platforms for free, and it just takes one great piece of content to go viral, and then your product's out there.
Yeah, with the viral part, that's quite rare, so I always kind of omit the viral part because I just don't think it's ever going to happen. But you're right, content is king. Carl was saying that where was it? Social marketing isn't about spread. Okay, so Carl, if you can kind of elaborate a bit more on that, that'd be quite interesting to know your thoughts. And I think there was there another question that we missed? I don't know.
But Josh, you just made some points there about you're able to target very specific groups of people, and it's amazing. I don't know if Have you ever placed a Facebook ad?
No, I
You
haven't
should.
tried it yet. I need to, but I think when I tried to do it instead of the Twitter one, it came up with about a million options. Do you want this or this? And I was thinking, I just want to post something. So I think I stopped, but I didn't really look
Yeah, yeah,
into it
sure.
too
So,
much.
so you can actually Google like how to place a Facebook ad. But what's fascinating is, you can target, like for me, with some of the products that I sell online, you can target like females between the ages of 20 and 35 who like to watch House of Cards and Game of Thrones, or something like that. Whatever it may be, it's so detailed, and that's what makes Facebook such a powerful tool. Um, but again, that's paid. I'm not an expert on social media marketing, but there's such powerful tools that can go so far. Um,
So I want to get into a bit more into the tech side, the coding side. So I think we've got a lot of
sure.
coders on here. So
Yeah.
you said so your product was scraping these other sites, and you used Golang because of the concurrency model. Um, how did you find switching from PHP to Go? Is Go something you still want to invest more time in? And also do you think the market around Go is still growing?
Yeah, so switching from PHP to Go was quite tough because Go is strictly typed, whereas PHP is not. Although version 7 now you can do some typing stuff, or you can use types, but it's also you got to compile your software, whereas PHP is just in time. And obviously the syntax is quite different. PHP, a lot of the stuff is object orientated, where Golang is more of like a functional paradigm. Yeah, it was quite a steep learning curve. It actually, what it taught me was like how little I know. I know so much about PHP and so little about so many other languages. But with persistence and just keep on trying and keep on trying, you eventually get there. So yeah, I think with anything, there's going to be the learning curve will be quite steep. But once you make it past that learning curve, then it kind of like settles off, and you can just chug along, and you can produce like quality code or decent code. And yeah, in terms of the market for Golang, I mean, Go is definitely, I think, not so much in South Africa, but from what I've seen, follow like the Go meetup in London, because Monzo is built on Go. Monzo has obviously exploded in the
I have
UK.
my Monzo card somewhere. But yeah, I love Monzo. I didn't realize that they used
Yeah,
Go. Okay.
I think a lot of their stack is built on Go, and I know I
Okay.
met a guy. Well, I don't know him that well, but I met him at PHP meetups years ago. I think his name's Matt Heath or something like that. But I think he's involved in like the Golang sort of meetup in some way or another. And I see there's a Go conference that's actually run by Joan Cherry, because she used to do the PHP conference, and that seems to be growing every year. Like, I mean, Go is an amazing language because it came about in 2009, and the guys who created the language were like, let's build a scripting language, so like PHP, Python, and that kind of thing. um, but that's strongly typed. Let's learn from the mistakes in all other languages. And I just think it's such a great programming language. It really is. And I think for me, if my startup does eventually fail, I think my next job, whatever it may be, if I do have to end up getting a job, I think I'll literally just go in as like a mid-level developer in a completely new language, because it's challenging having to learn a new language. And I think if you constantly challenge like that, you're growing and learning new things. Whereas if I go into a PHP job now, you know, um, it'll be fairly straightforward. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, no, it does,
yeah.
and I think for the people who are watching, I think it's interesting to know that, especially the ones who are starting to learn to code, that learning your first language is probably the hardest, and then learning
Yeah.
another one afterwards a lot easier. Okay, if there is a paradigm shift, like you said, from OO to object orientated to functional, or vice versa, then there is an additional kind of learning curve. But in terms of the 80% of the main structure of the languages, in terms of, okay, syntax will be different, but in terms of kind of conditions and why would you use a condition, why you use a loop of some sort, the principles are very, very similar. So if anyone who's watching and it's you're new to coding, just learn that one language, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. Learn it, and then the other ones will definitely become easier. So that's yeah, so it's good. So I mean, I know you do other languages as well, other technologies. I mean, as a web dev, we need to know so many. We need to know JavaScript as well. Maybe not in full detail, but at least enough to do the front end as well. And then there's the HTML, CSS, and then on top of that, you might use SCSS, or you might use something else. In addition, there's so many kind of layers of abstractions and so many different frameworks. Yeah, I think it's just good to just get stuck in and just to learn things.
Yeah, and you just have to persist, I think, too. Like, I think, when you started, like, I remember when I first programmed, I didn't know what the hell was going on. But it's like with anything, like you were saying, with you doing like Twitch streams over and over, with anything, the more you do it, the better you'll get. Well, that's kind of, like if you can't, like, if you're not fit and you can't run 5Ks, but if you go run 5Ks every day, eventually you'll be able to run 5Ks very easily. So it's like anything, you've just got to persist. Consistency, you just keep on trying and it gets easier. But there's a couple of things I love about Golang, and like, just simple things like, I don't know, with PHP, you've got all the PSR standards, PSR 0, 1, 2, 3, and, there's a whole PSR group, and like to come up with like coding standards and certain standards for PHP, and, 2 spaces versus 4 spaces. And like with Golang, there's a tool called Go FMT, which you just run your code through and it formats your code. There's one coding standard and style for Golang, and that's that. So the debate around that's just gone. So there's no like 5-hour debate about tabs and spaces, and so that kind of like just gets rid of like a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because me, I don't have a particular preference on standards. I just want there to be a standard set and just stick to it. Okay, I do like closing semicolons at the end, for example, and open and closing brackets, that I know some languages aren't too keen on, or you don't have to use it. But whatever it is, I'll make my peace with it, as long as there is a standard and just everybody's on the same page. So that's actually a really nice selling point to have, that there is a standard already set.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at Go code, it's all formatted the same way, and I think from a learning perspective, it makes it easier, because if code is just got all different formatting styles and it's all over the place, it does definitely make it a lot like there's more friction there, than just picking things up.
And then one thing that always gets me about that is, if one person isn't using the coding standard, even if it is just spaces or tabs or how indentations or where the line breaks go, and then the next person picks it up, makes a line change, uses the IDE to format it correctly, then when you look at their PR's got like 100 line changes, but actually it's only one line change really. The rest is just kind of formatting, and that kind of bugs me. That's why I like everyone to have the same standard.
Yeah, that gets me too. You should never have like a PR you should make like the format changes like a separate PR.
True.
Excuse me. If you've got formatting changes and actual code changes in your pull request, it's an absolute nightmare. And that's a big bugbear of mine as well.
So I need to ask
you. There's just
sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's just a lot of things about Go that, look, that just, I've just really enjoyed, and just really have like, been able to write, software with concurrency allows you to model real world problems a lot better. A lot of these new tools like HashiCorp's tools, Terraform, Console, all those things, they're all written in Go. Docker's written in Go. I think it is mainly Go, because Go is taken like all the lessons we've learned from C, C++, Erlang, all these different things, and said, okay, if we had to build a new language, how would we do it? And I think it's pretty cool. You had a question?
Yeah, I do. Before I ask the question, I was just going to read out some comments from Car, just talking about, the functional approach is coming up. Yeah, I think it went in cycles. If I remember correctly, when I started coding, a decade ago, it was more functional then, and then it became more all about OO, and I think functional is kind of coming back round again. I think things go around in a cycle. And Carl mentioned Elm and Reason ML. So I know I haven't used either of those, but I heard about them. I know people do rave about those. They've got quite a strong community Um, but I haven't broken into those. I mean, Jeremy, have you looked into Elm or Reason ML?
I haven't, no. But so just to go back a step, I think you can do both in Golang, if I'm not mistaken. So you can actually do like an object orientated sort of approach. So I'm just trying to bring the Twitch stream back up here, and you can, yeah, you can do functional and both OO. It's just not OO in the traditional sense.
Sure.
Um, but going back to the other question you asked me, no, I haven't done any. I see the question there, ELM, and is that also a new? Is that a paradigm? Is that a programming paradigm? Like,
Elm is a JavaScript framework, but it's
reason.
it has something. Like I said, I haven't used it. I just know people talk about it. Some people, I know people made games in it quite easily. It's got, I think it's got a slight different kind of paradigm to it. I don't know if that's probably a bit too extreme. Maybe paradigm's too strong for that. And then Reason ML, I've heard of. I don't know much about it, but Car, feel free to. Elm is a language. Oh, okay. It is its own language. It's a bit like
Okay.
TypeScript. I'm a huge fan of TypeScript. Really, really am.
Yes, yeah, I've heard a lot about TypeScript. I haven't done much myself, to be honest, but I've heard a lot.
Car, I'd be interested to know if you've used TypeScript and how you'd compare it to Elm as well. If you can give us some feedback on that, would be quite interesting. TypeScript is awesome. It is really good. I mean, for the JavaScript world, I think TypeScript is really good. And because you get that IntelliSense when you're typing, it kind of underlines it if the property doesn't exist on the object or if the function is not available, and what you're getting back from that object or that function. Is it the same in Go? Does the IDE help and say and give you IntelliSense kind of
Yeah,
suggestions
it's
and
actually
stuff?
really, yeah, it's actually really good. So I actually just use, funnily enough, I've still got PHP Eclipse, but I installed the Go plugin, and then you just point it to your Go like source directory in terms of like the actual Go language, and yeah, you get code completion and all those kind of things. You're asking like now that your question earlier about going from PHP to Go, like you can't just like assign an integer to a string and the program won't compile. Those kind of things take a little bit of time to get used to, or you have to convert a string like an int to a string, like stupid little things that you just take for granted in PHP. That's all happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think
But then
that's
it's
good though to have that a bit more strict. So there's kind of less kind of silly kind of coding issues or run when you're running the code, it doesn't quite do what you want it to do always, which is I think is a bit of a pain. So I think it's good to have that strict type, and if you do want to cast something from a string to an int or vice versa, that you explicitly say it. You made me think of a question. I've kind of now forgotten it as I was
but
talking.
but there's quite an interesting point here. So I'm not sure that the one language approach works in the future. Languages are far more purpose made currently. So, so yeah, that's quite an interesting point that because if you think about PHP, it solves the web problem, which is kind of true. And then people adapted it so that you can write command line programs. Um, look, at the end of the day, I think Eddie would agree. Something that we always used to talk about. Use the right tool for the job. You know what I mean? I think what a lot of people do is like for me, I actually wrote the original version of my scrapers in PHP, and it wasn't efficient, and it was never going to scale, and it was never going to work. And then I rewrote it in Go because Go had concurrency. So it's also about using the right tool for the job at any given time.
I
I
also
think a lot of
think
people.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I think a lot of languages they do start off a bit more kind of specialized and then branch out a bit. I mean, look at Python as well. Python is doing server side web, is doing data science, is doing so many things. But I don't think it started
Yeah,
off like that.
yeah, Python's become. I haven't done any data science stuff, but a lot of the data sciencey stuff. I met this guy the other day. He wasn't actually a programmer. He was a. They're doing like he's basically like I don't know what you call it, like not a biochemist, but someone that studies like human DNA and all that kind of stuff. And he was talking about how they're using Python to process large data sets. Um, and whenever there's big data stuff, Python seems to have a lot of libraries and tools. And I think that's probably because Python was used quite a bit at Google. Um, and I think, obviously maybe Google, you're talking, billions of users, and I think maybe a lot of data stuff came out of Google. I don't know, I'm making assumptions now, but Python was used a lot at Google, and then they've replaced a lot of their stuff with Golang. They use a whole bunch of different programming languages. But yeah, it is interesting. What you said there's a perfect example. You can use Python on the command line. You can use it as in your web, for the web usage, for like to write an API, an HTTP API. You can use it for data science. So yeah.
I was looking at the comments. Car's elaborating on Reason ML is Facebook's language targeted to replace JS and React. Okay, interesting. And Swift is being used Swift is becoming big in data science. Okay.
Is Swift is that Swift for like the replacement for Objective-C?
I'm guessing that's the Swift he means, which is why I'm surprised it's being used for data science. But I know that, like I said, languages do start out specializing. So Swift was specializing on the iOS, but it might be branching out to different things now, especially if it has certain kind of pros and cons that suit that situation. So Jeremy, I know you're going to be short on time soon, so I do have a question that I ask everyone I meet, everyone I speak to, and I'm always pushing it in my streams as well. Well, actually, yours is probably two parts of the question. One is your project open source? And the second part is, what open source work do you do? If you don't do any, why? And I want to shout at you.
Okay, sure. So is my software open source? No, it's not. What is quite interesting is that I've now got 2 to 3 years worth of supermarket data that if I can't monetize it, I'm going to open source it. I would like to open source it. I'd like to put it out there, because I think if that gets into the hands of the right developers and the right people, it can really disrupt the retail market in South Africa. I know, it's a bit of I think if I did that, I might have some people coming after me, but I would love to do that. To be honest, I definitely don't do enough open source. I need to do more. And, look, I consume everything I do on a daily basis is open source software. I think my last contribution to open source was, it'll be there on my GitHub. I actually, I basically triaged a bug in Vagrant, but it was Ruby. So I started to look at the source code and I was like, this is going to take me too long. So I triaged the bug, and I kind of went and looked at all the issues, and I connected a couple of issues together, and I gave a really good bug report, and someone actually fixed it, and it's now in Vagrant. So that was my last contribution. Look, I'd love to contribute more. If I find something in my daily, if I find a bug in a piece of open source, then I'll make a note and I'll definitely go out my way. But I do definitely need to do more open source stuff. I've been saying that for a while. It's just at the moment, with the time constraints, I don't have. I think if I won the lottery, I think I would literally just pick an open source project, and just contribute to it. I mean, when I felt like coding, I could just code or whatever. That would be the dream. But I have been thinking a lot about, to improve my Golang. On your point, I've been thinking a lot about contributing to some of the HashiCorp tools. So Packer, I've been looking at the source code a lot, and I'm looking at the issues, and it's definitely something I have thought about a lot, but I haven't actually executed on. I need to. I know you're always at me, but I need to do more.
I'm always at you. I'm always at everybody about open source, but I liked what you did. You didn't have time to solve the Ruby problem, because Ruby is not your forte, but you joined issues together and you did a really good bug report. So for me, that's probably more valuable actually than doing the fix yourself, because people always think about contributing is about codes. That's usually kind of the first thing that gets done, and people always forget that you can contribute by confirming a bug with a bit more information and all the rest. Contributing to documentation, or fixing typos. So that I consider all of those as contribution. Anything that benefits the project or the community, I see as a contribution. So then that sounds good. You just need to do that on a daily basis. 30 minutes a day. No, it's 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's about finding the time. I mean, look, there's definitely more I can do. Look, it was quite funny. I went through a streak. So I used to contract a lot on projects in the UK. I remember I had 3 months off, between contracts once, and I contributed a lot to ZF1 because we used that on the and I actually got a lot of bugs So, but that's like years ago now. And ZF2, the cool thing I liked about what's really cool, like the one thing I really like about contributing back to like a PHP web framework, whether it's Zen framework or Symfony or any one of those, is that you fix a bug. That's actually like quite a critical bug, and then that gets merged back in, and then that gets upgraded on, millions of web servers everywhere, and code you've written is running across millions of applications or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of applications, which is a really cool thought, right? Like your bug fix is like running everywhere, and I've always thought that's like a really cool thing. But yeah, I do. Yeah, I mean, my biggest contributions I've made in the past, which is Zen Framework 1 and 2, and I definitely, definitely could do some more. Yeah, if I find a bug, like I say, I'll always, contribute that back. But I think this also is about finding balance. I think you're quite similar to me, Eddie. Like when I'm working on a project, I put everything into it, and by the time like it comes to the evening, I'm like so drained. I'm like, let me watch some TV or let me do something else and try and find that balance. But
Yeah,
some excuse.
my watching TV is coding, so that's fine. It's open source coding, so it's fine. As I come home, I'm writing to relax because it's different. I think when we're actually going to do a video on this because I think it's important that people realise that, especially for the people who aren't techies or aren't coders, that when you go to a day job or to a client, that you're not coding 100% of that day. You're probably only coding for less than half that day because you've got meeting, you've got to speak to the BA, understand requirements. You might be doing a bit of DevOps stuff like fixing environments or CI. I mean, there's a whole, or writing automated tests, a whole raft of things. So for me, like you said, when you have a stressful day, when I come home, I want to, I actually do want to code in open source, but I'm doing something that I really want to do and I'm super passionate about. And I can do it in the way that I want. I mean, what I love about developing my own projects is that I do something that's called, I've even forgotten the initials now, but path of least resistance. So if I want to do something in a specific way, it ends up being painful, I'll just take a different, do it slightly different, take a different route. I'll say, you know what, okay, I don't want that over there, and I want it done slightly differently, because for me, it's the functionality, as long as it's good enough. But when you're doing it for a client or you're working for somebody, if that's how they want it, that's how the designer or whoever has done it that way, most of the time, it's good to have that conversation with them and say, do you really want this? You're going to get kind of 10% benefit, but it's going to take me 90% of that effort. But some people aren't always clued up to that. They say, I want it to be pixel perfect, or I want it to do this. Whereas when it's your own project, you can be a bit smarter and just be more efficient with your time and kind of do that 80-20 rule with 20% of the effort, get 80% of the benefit. Carr actually brought up a point about Rust. So I just want to actually ask about that. I know that Rust and Go are different, but I know people who are passionate about Go are really passionate about Go, and people who are passionate about Rust are really passionate about Rust. So have you compared the two, Jeremy? And if you have, what do you think?
No, I haven't. To be honest, I've heard a lot about Rust, but I haven't, played with them much. The reason I picked Golang, I think Rust has also got a good currency model, but you might have to correct me on that. The reason I picked Go was simply because it was, a Google product. And anything that like Angular came out of Google, anything that comes out of Google is generally well supported, and so that for me was the reason. But I must actually take a look at Rust. But again, there's so many technologies out there. Where do you got to draw the line somewhere? But no, so I can't really comment on that. But I'm making notes here. I'll write that down.
I thought I saw you writing. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, even if you have a look at the Rust and just as a basic kind of, I don't know, their kind of hello world, just interested to see kind of how it looks, what you think of it. I hear it's really quite powerful, but I also hear the same about Go. So yeah, I'd be interested to know if someone's compared the two. And also, just to get back to the open source topic. So we spoke about contributing to open source, about open sourcing our projects. What about also how do you find? So you were saying that come to the worst, if your startup doesn't work, you'll go find a contract job or a permanent job. You've got options. But do you think that open source helps somebody looking for work? I strongly do, and I found a lot of my work recently through GitHub. I've never got anything from LinkedIn, but I've got loads of stuff from GitHub and been contacted by Facebook and Google and so on. But I'm interested to hear someone else's thoughts on that.
So just quickly, I need to get going. So this will be the last question
I'm
going to answer, and then we can maybe continue the conversation.
We'll do a part two.
I think Yeah, I think GitHub and open source is like the SoundCloud for musicians, um, the YouTube for videographers. It's where developers can really showcase their skills. Yeah, obviously, if you think of main, everyone knows who Fabian Ponce is. I don't know if I said his name correctly, the guy who did Symphony. So it definitely can elevate your profile. It's definitely good for your career contributing to open source. I mean, a lot of job applications I see say like, are you involved in open source or do you contribute? So I think, I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer, especially for someone who's young and up and coming. So, straight out of uni, maybe doesn't have any experience, is struggling to find a job, whatever. If you've contributed to a ton of open source, people can literally see your work, the quality of your code, do you write tests for your code, all those kind of things. So definitely can make a huge difference. There's a lot of, like, when you said that, now there's a lot of people that just names that just came to my head from the popular. I know PHP stuff a lot better than I do Go, but Sebastian Bergman, who did PHP Unit, the guys that all got their names on the tip of my tongue that did the BAD testing tool. You'll know his name for PHP.
Constantine.
So if you're involved and you're involved in some way with those open source projects, then it definitely, people,
That's a really good way of looking at it, actually. I never thought about that. If you asked me to name 20 people who do open source work, I could name it like that. If you say name 20 people who on LinkedIn do something useful, I couldn't name one person. I know I have people on LinkedIn, but it's just because I've met them, they connected with me and I accepted. But I don't know kind of anything about what they do or what value they add to society or the community and so on. So that's actually a really interesting way of looking at it. Carr just mentioned that Rust solves concurrency in a different way, that it's memory safe and you transfer ownership of the object. So that's, I guess, something for you to have a look at and see. Like I said, I'm interested to hear people's thoughts who are either familiar with Go or familiar with Rust or familiar with both, and see the pros and cons, right? Because every language is going to have its pros and cons for different things. I remember when I did Go with you in FOSDEM at the conference like about 5 years ago, I thought, I'll just read a file from disk, like a JSON file. That was like a mission. So although it's really fast and all the rest, it's a mission. I need like 10 lines of code. I'm sure it's improved now, but you need 10 lines of code just to read a JSON file. Whereas in, JavaScript or PHP or whatever, it's like 1 line. Even in Java, it's like 2 lines. So, but the advantage is it's really fast. So I suppose it depends what you're kind of trying to do and what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's also a bugbear of mine in Go. But once you realize why I kind of understand why it's like that. So what I do is, because Go is strictly typed, and your JSON model, all the properties in it have to then be defined. So name has to be a string, age has to be an integer, whatever. You can actually take your JSON. It's a really cool website, and you stick your JSON in, and it'll actually produce the struct that you need to use in Go. And so that'll actually simplify it for you. And then you can JSON decode quite easy like you can in other languages. It's just that for me was also a nuance in the beginning, but now that I know how to deal with it, it's not actually much of a big thing. But you're all right. The first time you do it from like something like PHP, you're like, no, this is dumb and stupid. Why can't I just say JSON decode and get an array? Because you can't,
Well, that was also including reading the file. I think I had to like open a handle or whatever and get the resource and then open it in a certain way, like because it's the read, the append, or whatever it was. And I think I just want the contents of this file. I don't care kind of how you do it, but I know there are big benefits to it for performance and so forth.
It's obviously then a lot quicker, So.
I know you're short on time, so maybe we should call it a day there for part 1.
Let's call it a day. We can do part 2 when I'm not. I've unfortunately got to get to a birthday party.
You're always busy though. You're always busy. It took me this is our 4th attempt to arrange this conversation.
So we can set a date. I'll be online tomorrow. We can quickly chat, and then we can do part 2, and we can link it to this, and we can probably continue because I can also talk about your startup. There's some more things I can talk about.
Absolutely, I'd be really interested for you to, because you as someone who not only code but also does DevOps stuff and has their own startup. Really interested to know your feedback on Dashboard Hub. And I mean, most of the people watching probably heard me talk about it a lot about technologies, but we can kind of go over it quite quickly because it's changed since last time we spoke, and get your feedback. But if anyone has any questions for Jeremy to include in our next chat, just join the Discord. The links below, and we'll make sure we cover those in part 2, where we're a bit less rushed.
Yeah, so I'm a bit behind, so I need to go. It was cool to chat, Eddie, and good to catch up. But yeah, let me run, and then we can do another one where I'm not rushed for time, and we can just talk.
No, that sounds good. And just quickly answer Car's question. Car's going to say that as contractors, we do own our web-based company, but we work for our clients, and what we're trying to move towards is having our own products that we can kind of sell and kind of scale a lot better. Because even as a contractor, even if you earn like 10 grand a day, which is super amazing money, there's only 7 days in a week, and there's only kind of 365 days of the year, so you can't scale that. So I think a lot of people I've spoken to, including Jeremy and Venzera, that a lot of you know, who also known as Andrew, if you had a product, if you sold it for £100 a month or whatever it is, if you scaled that to 10 people to 1 million people, it's kind of the same principle. You're building on your platform and your product. So that's something I think a lot of us want to move towards, is actually having something we can work on, because we're passionate about working on our projects, but also then we can scale it a lot better. So Amazon ad blocker, the answer.
It looks like there was maybe an edge on the Twitch stream. It's crazy. Look, Eddie, I'm gonna
Okay,
run.
you go. We'll catch up soon. Listen, thanks to everyone for watching.
We'll catch up soon. Yeah, I'll be online tomorrow. We can also then quickly chat again. But okay, cool. I must get going. Thanks a lot.
No worries. Have a good day. Take it easy.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.